Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, I'm joined by Laura Butler, Chief People Officer at Workfront, an Adobe company. Welcome to the show, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Nice to see you. Where are you joining us from, I should ask?
I'm joining from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nice. Is it a lot nicer than where we are? Because it's miserable, horrible weather in the UK, raining as always.
I think that we borrowed that weather today because it's very similar, but hopefully it turns into snow for the weekend for some skiing.
Some snow? We've got snow projected.
Yeah. Wow. Well, in the mountains, Salt Lake's perfect because it snows in the mountains and it doesn't in the city. So
wow. Great. But you're probably prepared for it because for us, when it snows, you just can't do anything. The whole entire UK shuts down. If it snows, you can't leave your house. The trains stop working. Nothing works. So I think hopefully you're a bit more prepared.
It takes us about 3 feet in order to have that impact. But yeah.
The last time it snowed here, I couldn't even get into my car because the handles on our Tesla, our car, froze shut.
Oh my gosh.
We were just outside trying to get in the car. I was like, oh, clearly I'm just going to have to wait a little bit to get in there. That was a new experience for me.
That is a new experience. That's awesome.
Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and your background and journey to where we are now.
So I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, so born and raised in Colorado, but I moved to Vail after college, and it's the tourism industry. I moved to talk about skiing, and I took a job at a meeting planning company, and there were so many logistics that had to be managed in that meeting planning company. I mean, people being picked up at the airport and events and how many chairs do you get and silverware and all sorts of different details. And so I actually went to the library and I took a video cassette and learned how to program a database to manage the logistics. And I really fell in love with software. So I went into software, started implementing HR software, and I thought that was fantastic. And I took that knowledge and went to a company that was hiring 4,000 people a week in 38 countries, just really fantastic scale. And loved being in that role, but I had the pull from software again. So I went and worked for Taleo, who is in some of the world's largest brands. And I got to learn about how they were managing the employee experience. And I couldn't wait to put the best thoughts of that to work. And I've been in HR as a practitioner ever since.
Amazing. And for those that aren't aware of Workfront, tell everyone a little bit about the company.
What I love about Workfront actually is, like when I said I had written that database of managing logistics and all the things going on, Workfront is a work management software company, particularly around being the marketing operational system of record. And so the ability to put all of your work in one place, collaborate with other people, manage workflows, Workfront makes work better.
Yeah, love it. And I think now more than ever.
Now more than ever. Absolutely. I've been very grateful.
Yeah. So what we're obviously here to talk about for everyone listening, obviously it's in the title, but it's based on a piece of research, right, called the State of Work Report. So give everyone a bit of background on that, and then we'll kind of jump into the research.
Yeah, the State of Work report is something we've done for the past 7 years to really understand the kind of digital experience and watch that evolve. This year, what was interesting about our State of Work research is that we did it twice. We did it at the end of February, beginning of March, literally like it ended a week before the lockdown started happening. And then we did it again this past late November, early December to see what sorts of things had changed in terms of how people were looking at work.
What were your biggest surprise?
Technology continues to be more and more important to the work experience. I was surprised by the decision making that some people make based on technology. You know, one of the things we talk about is attracting and retaining people. That's kind of the HR element. You know, pre-COVID, 22% of workers said that they'd already quit a job because the workplace tech made their jobs harder. And today, nearly a third say they've said goodbye to an employer whose tech was a barrier to their ability to do good work. Even more concerning, kind of as a proactive thing, is about half of the US workers say they're likely to leave their current job if they're unhappy or frustrated. So I think that this digital revolution has really shortened people's patience with technology. And that was something I didn't expect to see.
I think one of the things that stood out to me when I read it was the fact that digital workers are so much more resilient than we thought.
Absolutely. I think actually all of us are a lot more resilient, than we initially thought. So one other thing that was interesting about this report is that some of the basics of work haven't changed. Like, why do we work? We want to know that our work matters, that it's making a difference, that it's supporting like organizational priorities, and that there's freedom and autonomy to decide how to best support those company goals. And that continues to increase. So just that basic tenet of knowing work matters. And then knowing that we have the skills to do that work is also really important. Being proud of what we accomplish. I thought it was interesting in the report that it was the top deterrent to, when you look at the report, what causes people to leave right now. And this feeling underappreciated actually post-pandemic rose by 8 points. Feeling underappreciated. And people want to know, I'm proud of what I'm doing. It matters. I thought that was pretty significant. It made me think about, how am I showing recognition and not just jumping on calls and getting into work?
Why do you think that is? Is it because, naturally those maybe those moments occur when we're face to face in an office? For me, if it was my sales team, I see a deal coming, I walk over, say congratulations. Are we not recreating that in the digital world effectively, do you think?
I don't think that we are. I think that people are getting on the call for a project. There's 30 people on the call. They just get right to it. Some of the things that we've done, I've got actually sitting on my desk a little icebreaker box of questions to ask people
Nice.
to do that. And then we also, we've been using this tool Motivosity for a long time. And that's a digital tool. And that's actually helped us connect people globally as well, with recognition and being able to digitally acknowledge somebody with a nice little high five. We give them a Motivosity buck that they can then redeem for things. And what's great about the tool isn't necessarily the platform itself as much as it is that it reminds you regularly. Here's the people's birthdays coming up. Here's their anniversaries coming up. These things that we are like, that happened.
Yeah, we're all human. We're not all going to remember everyone's birthday.
Totally.
And, to get a little nudge. How do you get the nudge? Is it in like an app or an email? What does it look like?
It's in both. So I do get an email. Unfortunately, as much as I really don't love email, it is here to stay, I think. And but it also through Slack and through the app as well. But email's my main channel. And honestly, it makes such a big difference because people want to know that they've got a great relationship with their manager. And this is where I think that state of work, that digital work experience, having tools that actually create a stickier experience that, especially as a leader, it's great to get these nudges on how to recognize and give feedback to individuals. And not just on your team, by the way, but outside of your team. Not to, Motivosity is the tool I have the most familiarity with, but what I also love is it'll remind me when I haven't recognized people on my team in a certain time period, which is really cool. It'll say, it's been 3 weeks since you recognized this individual, and knowing how important that is, as I just mentioned in the State of Work report, I'm really grateful for those reminders.
Yeah, because it's interesting. You see so much research now on posts talking about how productivity is through the roof.
Totally.
Right? But no one's seeing the underlying effects of that. And I think this is one of those.
Well, and also, the pandemic's been very difficult for folks, and having a spirit of gratitude and thanking and acknowledging people. It's interesting to me that people are feeling less appreciated than they did before pandemic. And we know that people are struggling mentally. And so to me, the solve is you could feed, two birds with one seed by just being grateful and acknowledging and appreciating individuals. it also will make you happier too.
That's a really good point you mentioned there, because one of the things I enjoy the most is actually going to congratulating my team,
Mm-hmm.
because you
Right?
do feel good about it yourself, and I feel horrible when I realize I have missed one of those moments to be able to do that. So it does work both ways.
It, yeah, it's funny. I think, sometimes one day goes into a week, goes into a month, and all of a sudden, what happened? And especially with gratitude, it's great to do that more regularly.
Yeah. One of the other things that the report talks about is how digital workers are even more engaged. So despite this lack of the what we just discussed, there still are huge levels of engagement. Why is that?
Well, it's like was astonishing. Like over 80% of digital workers were invested or very invested in their jobs, and it's because they're feeling like it is making more of a difference. We saw a 6-point increase, that they're feeling much more connected to the success of their companies than they were pre-COVID. I think that especially with the changing worker demographics, where we have a growing millennial workforce who actually believe that the work is more important than pay. And so having that connection to the work is really driving up engagement.
I think that's something that a lot of people have been talking about that recently as well, right? And if you're a company that doesn't have a clear why, a purpose, and you're not living and breathing that purpose, you're going to miss out on a huge portion of extremely talented people out there as well.
It's true. It's one of the things that I've been thinking about from a leadership skill development. When you're in an office, there's a lot of cult of personality that you can generate. Like you said, you can walk around, high five people, sit down with them. In a digital environment, it needs to be a lot more specific in what tools you're using, how you're engaging people, using things like Miro boards and collaborating and creating a way to really focus work. What are the most important things? How do you prioritize those things? And then how do you track those items and make sure they're getting done? And I think that the people that are seeing incredible success are those people and companies that are doing that really well.
That's definitely something we struggled with early on. All of our systems and processes went out the window. And overnight, I was like, I knew the work was getting done, but I couldn't track it. I couldn't measure it. I didn't really, there was no real visibility on what was happening. And it was causing a lot of miscommunication internally, even in a very small company like mine. So I can only imagine on scale what that looks like. And we've actually started using Motivosity for exactly that as well, even for our small team. Yeah. So it works. We'll see how it evolves, but definitely going to be better than us flying in the dark.
Well, and what was great too is something that is invisible is seeing the impact you have across. So oftentimes even, goal setting and purpose, and it kind of is a top-down process. But one of the things that I really appreciate about Motivosity is it'll show how people are collaborating across teams and departments, and that peer-to-peer meritocracy, because it's important that your work matters to your boss, but it's also helpful to know that it's making a difference for your peers. And it's been terrific to be able to see the folks that are really connected across the business and making a big lateral impact and not just making the boss happy.
Yeah, very important. Another part of the research, which a lot of conversations going on around this, is around how the different generations have been impacted as well. Could you talk more on that?
I thought that was fascinating. So in our company, we were about 70% millennial. And so this was very interesting. And you mentioned resilience earlier, that actually Generation X is much more likely to leave a job that's not functioning technically. They have a much lower threshold for the frustration that having poor technology tools will have, which really surprised me.
And I know there was also some research talking about how different generations are more willing to ask for help as well when it comes to kind of the mental health and well-being element, and look towards technology as a solution as well. So there's been some super interesting research that's going to come out of this that's really going to impact the way we work moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you touched on something, which is that generation's asking for help, and millennials are much more likely to do that. And from a work experience perspective, integration of wellness tools into your overall workday, I think is really incredible. And again, it helps people stay at the top of their game. Remember, that we're all people, connect with each other as humans, but the digital uh, health tools that are happening right now are phenomenal.
One of the things I was really excited to have you on the show is that you are a chief people officer. So the fact that you're looking at this research, I want to know what you've personally taken away from this, and how you're going to implement that in your new role within this organization. What are the key priorities that you've set yourself, given the research and given everything that you've learned?
Well, a couple of things. That importance of collaboration and how we foster creativity and innovation through that. And so I'll be the research around how critical that is and how it's rising to do that. That is one of those areas that I'll leverage kind of work management to reduce that context switching and allowing people to stay in their, preferred creative and marketing tools, having, workers focus on the high value work rather than all the little tactical work. The autonomy and alignment is another area. So critically focusing on goal setting. How do you set goals? How do you make sure people agree those are the right goals, and then align the workers along with that? The other thing that I think has been terrific is this has flattened everything. People are on calls, more people are on calls. You're not limited by conference room size or location. And so this notion, and we saw this in the report, is that global collaboration increased significantly, and people feeling like they're getting more contribution into their ideas, their goals, elements like that. And I think that's ultimately going to drive more innovation.
I've noticed that even in all of our partners that we work with, typically in the past, I'd work with maybe 1, 2 members of the team because it was face to face. But now we're in this digital world. When I jump on a Zoom call, they're inviting all the different people from all different departments globally. In some cases, I'm introducing them to colleagues they've never met through the platform, and it's sparking a lot of innovation, a lot of that knowledge flow throughout the organization as well. And also there is an element of increasing the inclusivity as
Yes,
well, because a lot of times if you're not based at a particular location and you can't physically go to that meeting, then you miss out.
absolutely.
For example, when my wife was on returning from maternity leave and she couldn't be in the office every day, I remember how that affected her, because she was like, I'm missing out on these meetings, I'm missing opportunities, I don't feel like my voice is being heard. And that's just an example personally in my life. And I could see the impact that had on her engagement as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. So when we would do engagement surveys with remote workers versus those that were in the office, you're absolutely right. They felt like they were missing out. They maybe would not get the promotion
Yeah.
opportunities, the career development. And now that is not the case. It is no longer the barrier. And we've been doing it long enough. It was a novelty at first, and we probably would have snapped back. But now it's been over a year, and I'm really hopeful and optimistic that people will stay with this more inclusive work culture. I think it's making a huge difference on engagement, satisfaction, and innovation.
Yeah. I've spoken to a number of CHROs over the last few months who actually are going the opposite direction. I mean, sorry, back to
Mhm.
the previous way. Like, everyone has, I spoke to a company yesterday, 20,000 employees, not going to mention their name, but
Yeah.
everyone, they've just announced that everyone's returning to the office. There's no flexible work. What do you think the impacts could be for companies that take that approach?
I think that it will be hard in the war on talent. Right now, especially for digital work, the unemployment rate, even now for digital workers, is very low. And so there's a lot of demand for talent, and it's a competitive advantage if you can hire people no matter where they're working. I do think it's harder to lead a virtual team, and more needs to be done to develop remote leadership skills, like I said, around goal setting, checking in, recognizing, developing relationships. And so these people that are moving back, and I understand there's some jobs like manufacturing and things that you have to be there. I understand that. But where there's flexibility to have people work virtually, I think that those organizations are going to win because they'll have access to talent. But I don't think it's exclusive. So I do think there's a hybrid, and this is where Adobe's moving into kind of that future of work experience around being more of, what does that future look like where you get together to collaborate, purpose-driven, being on site instead of necessarily always having to be there. But like I said, I know that there's roles that you have no choice. You have to be physically, and this has been extremely difficult to be remote, and having those roles return, I think, is fantastic.
I agree with you on that, but a lot of the big companies I'm hearing that are going back aren't necessarily, need manufacturing or companies need that. They are finance is quite a few, and quite a few large multinational finance companies have already announced everyone's going back. I don't think anyone's probably surprised that finance is leading the way of let's return to the office as well. But I think you are completely right in terms of the war on talent. People have options now. And I think we're coming through. I'm seeing more, even close friends, families, members of mine. I'm seeing them now. Now they're kind of out of that mode of feeling fearful of losing their job. They're looking at, and would you agree that I feel like people have had time to reflect over the last year while we've been at home to think, is this really what I want to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was actually just reading a recent Microsoft report that said that like 41% of people are considering, looking for another job. And I know it's also easier for recruiters to reach out and for people to interview. So the access to talent, and with, boards like LinkedIn and then reputation boards like Glassdoor, there's a lot of mobility that is an option for people. So creating that sticky experience every way you can, through the great relationship with managers, fostering a workplace of purpose, and enabling all of that with technology, I think is critical. And as people go back to the office, we might see folks who work from home, every 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So they blend in these organizations. The actual practices may vary from what people imagine them right now.
Yeah, I think the key thing is that it's a choice and flexibility. I don't think there's no longer this one size fits all. I think that kind of those days are kind of far behind us. And if you are a company that want to kind of go down the traditional route, you are going to be limited in your talent option. It's simple. It's as simple as that. And you lose a lot of talent as well.
And that absolutely drives it. I mean, I know even our engineering organization, we had to go remote. We thought, how are we going to do this? I mean, in an agile environment, how are we going to successfully develop and deploy software at the scale and speed we used to? And I'll tell you what, the quality, scale, and speed is improved. And so the results have borne out that actually we can not only be successful, but we can thrive. And when the workplace comes back and people start going back into the workplace, it'll be interesting to contrast the results.
Yeah. What do you think? I was going to ask you, what do you think the HR function of the future will look like? But it's kind of already here because we've leapfrogged forward of about 5-10 years already. But I'm seeing a lot of new skills kind of enter the HR department that perhaps weren't there before. How do you think this is going to shape? It's already shaping it, but the HR function itself and the skills that are required now moving forward.
I think that from an HR function, having digital fluency is important, and the relationship between HR and IT has never needed to be stronger than it is right now. So I think that's a huge shift in terms of HR folks, because even HR individuals walking around the office, taking a tone, taking a pulse, there's a whole new way to do that. That's virtual. And then the other piece is the skills that HR needs to develop are changing. And so the digital fluency isn't unique to just HR. The entire business needs to become digitally fluent and also needs to be able to focus on remote management. And to your point, how do you keep track of the activities and all the different things people are doing at the end of the month? What actually happened? And especially important to be able to see that visibility and transparency now.
Yeah. One of the other skills I think, which has definitely been sharpened over the last year, is the communication skills in terms of written via emails. Most of the leaders, and I'm sure you're the same, that Chris, every day I'm writing a new announcement, right? And maybe 20 different announcements of different geographies because they've been impacted differently. And it's almost like PR, comms, and HR have kind of blended together. Have you seen that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and not only like you touched on communications, used to have employee communications and then your external communications. It's the same now. Anything you tell an employee may very well end up on the internet. And, anything that you're telling your external market, employees are going to be validating the authenticity of that. So the fusion of that is really important. And also the communication streams, because we've got email and Slack and LinkedIn and Twitter and all the different feeds. Where do you check for information? By bringing the communication function into a more streamlined communication flow that sort of blends internal and external, you don't overwhelm people.
Yeah. With so much going on, everything's moving 100 miles an hour in this space. How do you personally keep up to date with current events, what's going on, and obviously keep your own skills sharp? Because it's just every day there's something new.
There is. I read a great book years ago by Julie Morgenstern called Never Check Email in the Morning. What was great about that book, she was a closet organizer and applied that to time management by not just letting the day happen, but rather by looking at the big rocks and ensuring that I'm doing those, like I'm looking at, emails and blogs and thought leadership every day during a certain time period, and then I'm not, and then working on just scheduling and calendaring, basic things. But that book, highly recommend. Never check email in the morning. It was a game changer for me, and that was well before the digital revolution. And I'm still leveraging all of those techniques to make sure that you stay sharp. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, everyone listening, including me, realized, oh my God, we all do that. I try so hard not to do it, but it's like a natural, I roll out of bed, I go, obviously get my daughter, check it. I'm like, oh, let me check what's going on. Let me check the schedule for the day. Let me check the email. It's just like a habit. You are right. And then you just lose. And also it's not a great way to start your day, because you really want to, for a while, especially if you've got a lot of work going on, it starts in quite a negative tone. And you really want to start with an attitude of gratitude and affirmations and thinking about all the things that are great and good for, because that kind of defines the rest of your day. So
well, and most people at that morning, you're really working on your more strategic work, your more thoughtful work, and rather than going immediately into react, makes a huge difference. But that's only one of a cornucopia of amazing survival tips in the age of just total digital disruption and bombardment of communication.
Yeah, I love that. You're just being more intentional about your time. I learned that the hard way, and I'm sure everyone listening went through and probably some people are still going through it, is the whole every half an hour there's another Zoom call, then you've got a Slack message, then you've got an email, then you've got a phone call, and then it just became overwhelming, and there was no rhythm, and there was no breaks. And I kind of had to find some software and solutions to be like, okay, this is blocking out this time. I actually have to take a lunch. And, blocking an hour a day to spend time with my daughter and my wife and just go for a walk or just get outside for a little bit, and ending my day, because there was no natural start and beginning. It was just, sometimes I look up, it's dark outside, it's 9 p.m. and I'm still working, because you don't have a commute to break it up.
Well, I love what you were just saying too about integrating your life. It's not just about, and this is what's so great about the people working remotely right now, is you can, enjoy some time with your daughter, you play with the dog, go on a walk. Those are all things that weren't happening before. And they do drive, again, your best work, your more innovative work, because you're not just having a day of reaction. And so when you look at the state of work report and people having this increased sense of purpose and this increased connection to the work, part of that has to do with the fact that they are able to integrate their life and sort of think and get ahead of things rather than just be an automaton reacting to email threads.
Yeah, and that was what was happening to me, and I've spoken about this on LinkedIn Live before, and it really affected my mental health. I started having anxiety attacks. Because I just felt like I was not in control of anything, and I was just constantly reacting, and it kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to just completely reassess everything and set structure, set boundaries, and put that in place, because it was just a vicious circle that I found myself kind of waking up every day going through the emotions. And I'm sure a lot of people I feel the same way as well.
It's true, but it's also right now is a record time of burnout. People feeling like they're at full tilt on home, they're at full tilt at work, and then they've got themselves and are somehow squeezing out that time for themselves. And so to anyone listening, I would just say to please put your oxygen mask on first, take advantage of companies' employee assistance programs. What we've been through is not normal, and ensure that you're taking care of yourself, not just everyone else from home and from work.
Yeah. And I'll make a special mention to any of the HR practitioners listening who are sometimes the worst culprits.
Yes.
Of taking care of everyone else but yourself. Make sure you do that as well.
The shoemaker that has no shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And especially a lot of leaders I work with who have global roles, they're on 24 hours a day, right?
Yep.
And it's never ending. And I can see it. I know I've known some of these leaders for many, many years. I can see the impact myself firsthand when I have those conversations. So make sure you take care of yourself. You can't take care of anyone else if you can't take care of yourself first. So take care of yourself first, and you'll be a better assistance to everyone else. Before we wrap up, what do you hope that our audience and that people listening take away from this research and from the conversation?
I would say that, again, focusing on the principles on why people work and ensuring that there is that connection to not just what the work is, but being appreciated and valued for doing that work. If you could do one thing, make sure that people know what they're working on and why, and then appreciate them when they do a great job.
Well, on that point, we've obviously spoken about, first and foremost, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And for everyone listening who keeps typing in the comments, we will share the report. But apart from that, Laura, I appreciate you taking the time out, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.